This is Atlas Thugged. As much as we have, it's currently a media blackout right now. It's about a 10-minute video here. Get the libertarians out of this party, dude. Part of a new series I'm going to be running called Bot or Not.
I grew up as a white man, and you're the exact opposite, you know?
It's time we have a difficult conversation about race.
40 IQ points it needs to think about what is being told to you.
Most people are just blatantly apathetic to what goes on around in their surroundings, let alone this blatant.
A trans woman's penis make you gay?
Can I define to answer that comment?
The dating market is for men your age. I'm not a misogynist, I'm a sexist. Right, like for example, like as a white man, I can go out and I could go right here in Columbus and scream the N-word as loud as I wanted to because I have that privilege. Those who would sacrifice a little freedom for a little convenience serves neither.
Titan says, Browns should be for whites. We were just trying to help them run a better empire.
Hey, truth.
But she's straight up, she's like, stock market. She's like, bro, like, I can't even buy a fucking house. Like,
and you know, it probably doesn't help that half the comments are, "Oh, you're not banned on YouTube." Man, how is this guy? How's this guy not banned on YouTube? It's like, yeah, I'm sure YouTube probably picks up on those things, and they're probably wondering why so many people are saying that, you know.
and all these top brass pundits who have some kind of association or relationship with Epstein, you know, it's getting to the point where you got to think like I'm about to go look at my residential history and be like, did I live next to Epstein for like some time? Like, man, everyone was planning must have some relation to Epstein. And then you go, oh, actually, no. This is because the administration is all wrapped in together with it themselves.
And I said this maybe about a year ago. You know, what if Christianity wasn't in such a cucked position that what if Andrew Tate, like Tristan, would have went to a Christian position? Fell for it again award, #1 right here. And you know what? I can't even make fun of the audience because I fell for it too. And that's probably what I'm most pissed about. He's huffing some extreme copium. Oh yeah, sister, you definitely owned him. Hey, can I see you after tonight? You know, it's like that's that's what you're competing up against because or bad jacketing him and calling him a weird little gay.
Is this like alt-right Kirk's husband? What am I listening
Yeah.
Okay, stop it. This guy's gonna get into statistics, stuff like that.
Oh, not statistics. Not
So-
we don't do statistics.
Hello and welcome in to another episode of Offensively Accurate, hosted by yours truly, Atlas Thug. Now, this is one that is very exciting. I've been waiting to get Pine Sap in here for a hot minute ever since. Shout out to Splenda, one of our moderators here on the moderation team. He ended up, I think it was an Instagram account he said, with like baseball cards is what he ended up using, had a couple thousand followers. He reached out to Pine Sap and it was wonderful. Pine Sap responded and here he is. And so I wanted to go ahead and label this kind of inside the mind of a Groyper. Pine Sap's kind of had a couple of viral moments, probably in the last like 7-8 months, that kind of caught my attention. The first thing of his that caught my attention was his rant against Trent Horn, which we'll get into a little bit. But largely the one that took over the internet, which was the Jubilee appearance. And that was where I think most people became acquainted with who you are. So without further ado, one final announcement. All super chats that are donated tonight will be given to Pine Sap to help with his recent job loss. For those who aren't aware, Pine Sap did lose his job because of statements that were made on a Jubilee podcast, which once again shows the extension of how free your speech is here in this country. But without further ado, welcome in Pine Sap. Who are you, brother?
Dude, I'm doing great, Atlas Thug. It's good.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. That is not good. Okay, well, Pine Sap will be here, trust me. We figured this out, guys. I'm gonna monitor for this. He should still be in here. I hope it's not Mossad, man. Hold on one second. He just rejoined. Let me get him in here real quick. You can probably see this on my screen, maybe not. He's back in, guys. Give it 1 second. I just have to give him permissions to the channel again because we keep it private. And what perfect timing, too. Mossad, UMFers. And he probably just shouted it out, too, the moment that he got bounced as well, which is like wonderful because everyone's joining, wondering why Pine Sap's not in here. Okay, Pine Sap just got given permissions again. He should be able to get brought back in. Are you back?
Dude, did I get kicked or something? That was crazy.
It wasn't me. I promise you that.
I don't blame you at all. I was like, did someone else kick me or something? I don't think it was like I don't even think it was like a thing of like internet or something like that.
It happened again. What is this? I have no idea what's going on, guys. Let me send this guy another link, actually. Man, I apologize for wasting everybody's time with not even being able to get this out there. Oh my gosh. What is going on? I'm going to make him a permanent member. Hold on. Let me figure this out, guys. I apologize. We do this one special way, and then now I'm going to just change it up here at the last second here. We're going to make Pine Sap permanent creator. Okay, let's save the changes here. Are you back in?
Yeah, I'm back in. Hopefully you can hear me well. Dude, I don't know what it is. Was it just like it was automatically kicking me from the Discord or something like that? Or
I don't know. I'm trying to make you like a creator right now, which I think it did. You should be perm member status. Dude, I'm
okay,
so
that's
confused.
good. That's super good. I wanted to make sure it wasn't just like kicking me randomly.
No, that was weird. I've had Jeff in here yesterday. I had Mainstream Dissident in here a couple days ago. No issues. Okay, so after we have a super botched ending, who are you, Pine Sap?
Dude, Mossad tried to get me. No, I'm Pine Sap. I'm a Gen Z Catholic apologist, and really, I think my form of apologetics is trying to reach out mostly to people on the dissident right, specifically because I saw a severe lack of, I think, Catholic representation in that space. that was faithful to the church, that was faithful to the magisterium. And so I wanted to kind of operate in that space and bring the gospel to all, all people, but especially, I think, an undertapped group in the dissident right and disaffected young men.
No, definitely. So when did this start for you? Like how old were you when this all kind of formulated for you?
Dude, I'm so unk. So this started when I was in junior year in college. So if I do my calculations right, that's like, so junior year would have been, I graduated in 2024 with my master's degree, but I graduated my senior year. So like 2022. 2022 is when I first started doing everything. And so it's been like 3 years about on the internet.
Nice.
And there's been a lot of change. There's been a lot of stuff that happens. Like 3 years doesn't sound like a lot when you're doing anything else. Like 3 years at a job, that's nothing. 3 years, like maybe playing the same sport or whatever, that's not really a long time. But in internet time, 3 years, triple that by 3, and that's how like long you've been on the internet. So I've been doing this thing for a long time.
Well, so then I guess I'm curious because I thought you were a bit on the younger side, which I guess you are compared to like Vincent James and like Tyler Russell. And the funny thing there too is you're spot on with that, right? I've only been really involved in like politics on the YouTube level for like 3 years. And in that time, I went from like listening to Tim Pool to listening to Nick Fuentes. So, so like it goes pretty quick. You know what I mean?
Dude, it goes pretty quick because anymore, you really can't stay blue-pilled if you're in this space for too long. In the days when, Nick was kind of censored and he was a small creator or what have you, Ben Shapiro was like all we had. Charlie Kirk was all we had. We only had Turning Point USA. But I remember after Groyper War 1, it was like the whole energy of the room shifted. And I started hearing more guys like Pat Buchanan, Samuel T. Francis, Joseph Sobrin, all these like paleocons kind of coming into the space. And I really jived with them because they were like authentically Christian. That was the biggest thing that got me, because the right before that, if it was Christian, it was very much like, oh, in my congregation, I'll enforce like morality, but I'm not going to legislate morality. It was very libertarian.
Right.
And I got to a point really towards the tail end of high school, but especially in college, where that wasn't enough for me anymore. I wanted to enforce Christian morality on a nationwide and societal scale. And libertarianism just seemed really, it didn't only seem gay. It's very easy to call it gay, but it also seemed very counter to really what we want as Christians, right? It seemed like at every turn, that ideology would just thwart any vestige of Christianity, and it would always try to kind of throw it off. And the more I started to read St. Thomas Aquinas, the more I started to read especially Joseph Damast, I didn't want to associate with that ideology anymore. And so, as your same journey went, I just started to get more and more red-pilled in this space, and I started to feel like Nick was really kind of appealing to a lot of the ideas I was really jiving with.
Yeah, one of the things that kind of really caught me off guard a little bit, but it's very true. You had kind of talked, I think it was the Catholic Herald. You had did a little bit of a sit down with them, I believe. So I read it through that article, and you had talked about how instrumental Nick was to your kind of conversion. And I don't know if that was to Catholicism or to Christianity in general. It's been a minute since I read the article, but I felt that as well too. There's a distinct kind of like spirituality where, he kind of jests a lot, but ultimately he remains true to the ideals of like what it is to be a Christian man, in terms of like monogamous marriage and such. And that's what was missing, when I'm listening to like Tim Pool or Dave Smith or, insert anybody who kind of fills the space there. I was living in the city at the time while this stuff is going on, and I'm seeing all of these Indians fly into the apartment complex. Blacks are, Nissans are flying off the highway ramps. And I'm like, when I listen to Tim Pool, it's like, he's not giving me the materials I need to understand and articulate what's happening around me. Like, they're just like ignoring all this stuff. And if you halfway bring it up in a way that's not politically palatable, they go, oh, wow, look at this racist. And it's like, okay. And it kind of, to me, over time, I see that what's sitting at the throne of this country is race. There's a throne in this country, and it's like, it's race or it's feminism. And I can't remember who actually kind of got me on this turn, but it's not a matter of if there is a religion that this government will honor. It's a matter of which. And And I think that
Right.
framing kind of changed it for me, where I was like, okay, yeah, if we have to decide, Christianity needs to take that top spot, not the secularism, not neoliberalism, not any of these others there. And so I guess on those ends, it's obviously a hard spot to be in, being on the dissident right, because you are battling not only just the left, but also the right. And it seems the majority of the fight right now is happening on the right, amongst the right. And I'm curious if you want to speak a little bit to that kind of infighting and like the resurgence of the paleocons coming back versus the neocons.
The infighting on the right is very interesting because you have multiple different factions that are kind of at play. You have, really sort of the like neocons, and ironically, Richard Spencer touched on this recently, where neocon at this point is kind of a pejorative. It's not that these people are actual neoconservatives like Kerry Bolton or Bill Kristol or any of those guys, but we use the term neocon because they are still very much into intervention in Israel. They are still very much into sort of propping up Judaism and propping up the sort of American empire as it stands.
Right.
And they're doing nothing to sort of change the culture around them. I think neoconservatism, too, is used as a pejorative because it's kind of empty in terms of social conservatism as well. We hear the old saying, right, from a lot of these people, well, I'm fiscally conservative, but I'm socially liberal. And as we've moved further to the right, they have become more socially conservative, but they're still tolerating homosexuality. They're still tolerating transgenderism, feminism, contraception, abortion, all these like evil Nansen ideas that we need to strip away if we're to be actually socially conservative. And that's who's really still safeguarding the right in terms of institutional power. They don't have popular support anymore. That has been completely evaporating, but they still have the money, they still have the means, and they still have the power. I mean, when we were in Detroit, people were telling me who were going inside, I think that was CPAC or one of the Turning Point USA events, there were no young people there besides the vendors. Everybody who was young was not in that event, and they were outside on the street with us at the Detroit rally. All it appeals to is like old fogey boomers, if they have any popular support, and the rest of it is just them leveling institutional power to gatekeep actually young conservative voices from having any kind of sort of say in the direction of this country and the direction of the right in general. The other issue that I find very much so is kind of this idea that even on the far right, there is a lot of infighting. We have groups like the Wignats that they are either pagan, atheist, or agnostic, and they hate Christianity, and they especially hate Catholicism because they're even okay with a certain form of Protestantism, but they're not okay with the totality of truth, which is Catholicism and will only ever be Catholicism. And so they're fine if you keep your Christianity in this certain bubble that they've kind of marked out as being socially acceptable. This was something that was very popular with the alt-right, where, in order to be a member of the alt-right back then, you couldn't be Catholic. You had to be like this weird form of kind of race idolatry, Protestant, or maybe Eastern Orthodox, but you couldn't authentically embrace the true Christian faith, which is the Catholic Church, right?
Yeah.
And we came in and we said, that's not enough. Catholicism, there is no Western world without Catholicism. And I don't want people to convert to Catholicism just for societal clout or just to rebuild Western civilization. I want them to convert because it's true, because it's saving, because it's salvific.
Yeah.
But similar to the fact that if there were no white people tomorrow, there would be no Western civilization. If there is no foundation of Catholicism, there's no Western civilization. Western civilization at that point becomes sort of like racial, like race-conscious liberalism that's been killing our people. I mean, you can go to Iceland and it's like, yeah, it's majority white. Sure, that's great. That's wonderful. We don't want our populations to be replaced, but they have the highest rates of homosexuality within Europe. There's still massive depression. There's still massive issues with sort of their social values. And so unless you embrace the truth of God, it's never going to be enough. And
yeah, amen.
I think also, too, the other faction we see on the far right is sort of this like BAP non-Groyper group that really is kind of trying to gatekeep us from moving the right in the correct direction.
Yeah.
You know, these guys will all the time brag about going to the gym and how, you know, they're eating raw meat and they're drinking raw milk or what have you. But when we bring up the fact that Usha Vance is not American, she's not an American woman, she is from India, they suddenly become like, they become like the same SJWs they used to make cringe compilations of in 2017. They're like, actually, she's American. Okay, that's what her paper says.
Right,
and
Redditor
she
stuff.
took a test on the Constitution. And it's like, no, dude, she's not American. And Vance is a fat gay guy who has every vested interest to be against us and against not only the forwarding of white identity, but also Catholicism in America.
Yeah, you know, and what's funny with that, and there's a lot there. Well, actually, let me get to this first because this is massive. House Leotardo donated $200. That's a massive fat super chat. Thank you very much, House, for that. That is huge. And then following up shortly after was Steve Splenda, who said, "In Namin Patrice et Fili et Spiritus Sancti, amen." He donated $50 as well. Those are some massive super chats. Thank you guys very much. We appreciate that.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
And there's a lot there, you know, and for one, the amount of factions on the right wing that you can kind of start to pick through, it's kind of wild. The second thing, though, and let's kind of get into this a little bit too, because I am curious. The same way you could probably call yourself, some people would call themselves cradle Catholics. I would probably consider myself a cradle Protestant. You know, I've grown up all Protestant. Now, probably about a year and a half ago, I stepped away completely. I consider myself, same way people call themselves politically homeless, I consider myself like Christ homeless, if you will. And so basically the last year and a half, I have been looking at doctrine, listening to arguments from Lutherans to Eastern Orthodox to Catholics to, you know, absorbing as much of Jay Dyer and Timothy Gordon as I possibly can to get an idea of what to do. And so I was going to say this towards the end, but I think this is a great spot for right now. What I guess then is your kind of elevator pitch for why Catholicism is not only just like the truest form of Christianity, but why those in the outside sects should also convert to Catholicism?
You know, it was kind of funny. I was talking with someone very close to me last night about the significance of the incarnation, right? The incarnation of Christ. Like, why does it matter that Christ became incarnate? And for all his faults, E. Michael Jones does put this, I think, in a very beautiful way, where when Moses is on Mount Sinai and God appears to him in the burning bush and he's talking to him and he says, you know, well, you know, what's your name? And God, of course, rightfully tells him, you know, you can comprehend my name, right? It's incomprehensible.
Right.
But then he asks a follow-up. He's like, well, what should I call you? You know, what should the people call you? And he says Yahweh. And Yahweh means I am who am. I am who am. Well, that isn't some just sophist saying. That isn't something without significance. I am who am. God has no beginning. He has no end. He is outside time. He is outside this universe, and he acts upon it. And Moses couldn't comprehend that because the Jews at the time were just a people of faith, right? They had sort of the fides, or the faith aspect of everything down.
Yeah.
But reason, philosophy wasn't something they were very familiar with yet. And then in ancient Greece, you have men like Plato, you have men like Aristotle, you have men like Socrates who they're thinking rationally through the question that we have asked since the dawn of time, which is, why am I here?
Right.
Why? That is a big question. What is the meaning of life? And they're going through, and Socrates is thinking to himself, right? Plato is thinking to himself. Aristotle is thinking to himself. All these gods in Athens, in Greece, they die, they fornicate, they take on the form of horses or centaurs or whatever it is to sleep with human women. They get drunk, they're conquering themselves, and they can be conquered. Even if we reverence them in a societal way, they are not the God. They are not the one God.
Yeah.
And Socrates didn't know who the one God was but he knew that there was one God. And for his crime, for speaking that truth, the people of Athens came to him and they said, you either need to renounce this one God or you need to drink hemlock and die. And Socrates just said, give me the cup. And he died. Plato writes in his allegory of the cave, I believe it's a dialogue with his brother. I haven't read through it fully, but I remember this verse. His brother says, if there was a man that tried to lead people out of the cave, as you know, for anyone who's not familiar with Plato's cave, it's us watching shadows on the wall, right? There's a light behind us and it reflects on kind of cardboard cutout images, and reflects shadows on the wall that we watch. And that's to illustrate people who are not familiar with the truth of reality. We just watch the shadows. But when we start to look behind us and we see that it's a fire illuminating these cutout images, we look up and we see that there's a light peering out of the cave, and we start to walk up out of the cave. And as we walk up out, the light from outside, it hurts our eyes at first. It's brutal. It's hard to handle. We can't fully comprehend what is this light of the sun that I'm looking at.
Right.
But as much as it initially hurts, it purifies us. And even when we try to go back down in, we can't watch the shadows anymore. We've been exposed to the light of truth.
Yeah.
But that light of truth, if you think of a cave, is freedom. It's true freedom. And Plato understood that man was imprisoned. Maybe he couldn't put his finger on it. We know what it is now.
Right.
Sin. But he understood that man was in this cave. He was imprisoned. And in this dialogue, his brother asks, would they not, if the righteous man, this image of a righteous man, a perfect man, tried to lead them out of the cave, would they not kill him? Plato responds, they would.
Yeah.
These men of Athens, these men of Greece, had the rationality side of knowing God, but they didn't have the faith. And when Christ came incarnate as a baby boy to us in a manger, not in a grand throne, not in a grand thrall, not in a grand castle, but as a baby in a manger, forgotten by the world, he was that righteous man that Plato spoke about. He was the God that Socrates died for. He was everything that was promised in the burning bush to Moses when he said, I am who am.
Yeah.
And that, I always try to not get choked up talking about this, but that meeting of faith and reason, the totality of all truth, of all wisdom, the hopes and desires and yearnings of our heart, the things that we have felt in the dark corners of our room, and when our whole day has ended and we're staring at the ceiling wondering, why am I here? Why do I exist? What is the reason for everything? My pain, my suffering, my sorrow, my joy, my love, my desire. He comes to us as a person.
Yeah.
And Jesus knew that the world needed to know him because his Father wanted to offer him as a gift to all of us. That truth no longer was something that we just read in philosophy books or we heard in lectures, but that truth was a person that we could reach out and touch and feel and know and love, and he could love us. And so because Jesus is the truth, he is the physical manifestation of that truth we have all hungered for, he had to lead other men to spread the gospel all over the face of the earth.
Right.
And those men were his apostles, the 12. And so they were ordained by him. They were given the power to forgive sins and to consecrate the Eucharist. And every single time we go to Mass, every single time we go up to that altar, and we're lowly, man. We are the people in the cave. And we've been watching shadows our entire life, and we're dragging ourselves up to the altar, and we're disheveled, and we're scared, and we're tired, and we don't know what the next day is going to hold, and we don't know what 60 or 20 or 30 years or even 5 years or a year from now is going to give us. But we bring ourselves up to that altar, and in that moment, when we partake of Jesus's body and blood, he embraces us. we become fully integrated in him and he becomes fully integrated in us. And everything that those philosophers wrote about, all those hopes and dreams and desires of the Israelites out in the desert in Babylon, become effectuated and become part of us and fulfilled in us when we receive that body and blood of Jesus Christ. And that is more powerful than anything that I can read in a college textbook. That is more powerful than anything I can hear in a song. That is a truth that is so indescribably beautiful that even at now, as I speak to you,
Right.
I can't put it into words and my lips fall silent. I know that's not a full treatment of every single aspect of our religion, but that's why I believe in Catholicism. Because I know when I go up to that altar and I receive from the hands of men who can trace their ordination back to those original 12 that loved and touched and held Jesus and he held them.
Yeah.
And that they are giving me that same Jesus who is touching me and holding me and loving me and hugging me. I know that's more real than anything that I could possibly say.
That's awesome. And you know, that's that aspect of moving away from just a book is something that is, you can see it in EO as well, but it's almost non-existent in Protestantism. And that was one of the other verses that really hit me hard, not verses, but lines that somebody had said was, you know, it seems like a lot of Protestants worship scripture, they don't worship God. And it seems like a very kind of obsession almost to always have to have a scripture backup, like there's no other source you can go to. And I think when, you know, you see this argument kind of fall through immediately, especially when you look at there was no canonized Bible for how long of a period of time, you know, and it's like, so what were people doing in those eras? And like, it very quickly can just fall apart if you do like just a little bit of apologetics for it. But that answer was beautiful. And I do appreciate you sharing that too, because especially for someone who I haven't put a badge on something yet, and I refuse to until like I'm right there with you, like having that certainty. It's like I'll probably sit here and say I don't claim anybody until I do have that. But I do appreciate that. And we did get another massive super chat in here. This is from Donnie Brook, $50. He said, "Thanks for coming, brother." So yes, thank you, Donnie. I appreciate that very much, man. And I haven't been doing a good job paying attention to the chat because you are a wealth of knowledge, and I do appreciate that very much. I'll do better paying attention there. I wanted to go move it away a bit away from Christianity, but still on the same note. This is to do with the first episode or the first video I saw of you. And you were going at Trent Horn pretty harshly because Trent Horn, I believe, was throwing a lot of people under the bus, largely because they were not in full agreement with the post-war consensus. And as that pertains to like going to the Wailing Wall, as that pertains to what's going on in the Israeli-Gaza conflict. And I don't want to speak too ill on Trent because I know his wife is going through something right now.
Absolutely.
But if you could speak to just like the post-war consensus and its grip on not only just politics, but also Christianity as it sits in terms of evangelicalism and dispensationalism more broadly as the one belief that Israel is this end all be all. Forgive me. And so I'm kind of curious, you know, with figures like Buchanan coming back, and I'm curious about, you said Joseph Sargon, right? Or Sargon?
Oh, Joseph Sobran. Sobran.
Interesting. I hadn't heard of him until I saw a post of yours earlier, so I'm curious about him as well too. But yeah, the post-war consensus, is it over? Or are we moving to something different? Where are we at with that?
There is right now a fight that goes back to the cross, and it didn't start with World War II, and it didn't start with before I say the word, what's the consensus on saying certain phrases here on YouTube?
To be honest, I don't really care. So just lay it on me.
Okay. The Holocaust.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people might say, oh, you know, you're a denier, you're this or you're that. It doesn't actually have anything to do with that.
Yeah.
You know, you could watch Schindler's List, think everything happened. You could think, you know, maybe some things are true, some things are off. That's not actually what's relevant here. What's relevant here is we know that any death is a tragedy and nobody's life is worth less, whether they are Jewish, not Jewish, what have you. Everyone has the same dignity and everyone is worthy of dignity and being treated with that dignity.
Yeah.
But the Holocaust specifically is used nowadays as a tool to bludgeon faithful Christians from any sort of work that brings the will of God into full fruition here on earth, right?
Yeah.
When we pray the Our Father, we say on earth as it is in heaven, because we want God's will to be effected here on earth, right? We want God's will to take form and place here on earth.
Right.
And the Jewish people do not want that. Not maybe every single, I'm not talking about, the Jewish guy you grew up with and you're probably still friends with. I'm not talking about the nice grandma who works at Sam's Club or anything like that. But by and large, Judaism stands as a bulwark against Christianity because it's Caiaphas at the foot of the cross of our Lord, him bleeding out and suffering even for him in that moment. And him looking up at our Lord all bloodied and bludgeoned and saying, if you really are the Son of God, why don't you come down and we'll worship you? If you really are the foretold Messiah, why don't you come down and we'll all fall at your feet?
Yeah.
And Jesus says, anyone who belongs to me does my will. You don't have a magic blood. You don't have a magic ethnicity that makes you belong to God. You belong to God because you were purchased at a price. And it was my blood that purchased you, not yours. And in that moment, the Jews that accepted him, their hearts gave forth like overripened fruit, and they were overcome with love and became some of the greatest evangelists and saints of all time. But the Jews who continued in their unbelief, those who had once had a covenant with God, they decided to shatter that covenant. They decided to break that bond with God and said, no, we won't worship your son. Father, we won't worship your son. Your son who purchased us for a price, we won't worship him. We won't fall at his feet. And so history from there has been an interplay of the Jews at every single turn trying to thwart Christ's reign on earth. They do not want his will taking place on earth. And they use any event they can. They use any means they can to try and thwart that rule.
Yeah.
And the sad thing about the Holocaust is there's no doubt it was a tragedy that people lost their lives. Nobody's disputing that. Right? Anyone who likes to come in, Pine Sap's a denier or what have you. I don't deny the tragedy of any human life being lost.
Yeah.
But you are using that event as a means to guilt people into walking on their hands and knees for the will of Judaism. And that is something, till the day I die, that I emphatically refuse to do.
Amen. And
I emphatically refuse to do that. You can torture me. You can put me through hell.
Yeah.
I am not going to do that. I am not going to be guilted in loving my Lord Jesus Christ because you want me to feel guilty. I didn't do anything. The Catholic Church literally shed her blood to save innocent Jewish lives during that period of history.
Yep.
And you still continue to use that event to bludgeon and harass and hate us. And that was my frustration with Trent Horn.
Yeah.
St. Edith Stein gave her life for the conversion and the safety of the Jewish people. St. Titus Brandsma, I'm pretty sure, died in a concentration camp. St. Maximilian Kolbe, all these great saints, these illustrious people could not have given more. And yet you have people like Rabbi Shmuley that dare to say that Venerable Pius XII, Pope Pius XII, who had given everything to try and thwart all the evils of that time, between the excesses of National Socialism and that of communism, to save innocent lives, and he dares to say he's a horrible anti-Semite. I'm not buying it, pal. That guilt's not going to work on me anymore. And there is a new generation of people who we are tired of being slaves on your plantation.
Yeah. You better believe it, man. And I'm right there with you. Like, and I guess let me explain it to you like this too, because I'm somebody who I'm catching up, right? Like I'm playing catch up. Like I'm nowhere nearly as intelligent or up to speed with where you are at, let alone like a lot of other Groypers that are in this space. So when I look at it, I kind of look at it like Martin Luther. know who he is, know a lot about the thesis. But what was this like second leading book? The Jews and Their Lies. I've never heard a word about it my entire life. Been involved in Christian groups, went from the Nazarene to Methodist to Baptist, been all over, never seen this book in my life. Why? And then the question, that's I think where most people go, is they go, well, why? Why is this one clearly like very historically relevant aspect all of a sudden been omitted the last 80 years? And that's when I think I started to do a lot more. It's very curious, right? You start with like, okay. And then you run into too many coincidences. You're like, okay, listen, something's up, something's off here. And I'm kind of curious then, was it that World War II was such a tumultuous period that was the first time it was ever able to really be successful? Because like you had said, this is not like this has been it started in the World War, in the World War era. This has been a thing since, Jesus was taken from us. So I'm curious on that end, what about World War II made it so successful? Was it the propaganda? Was it to do with just an extreme willingness to be receptive, to be empathetic to what happened? Like what was it that made it so successful?
The grandfather of Pope Benedict XVI famously said that if there wasn't an ethical treatment of the Jewish question in Germany, then there was going to be the rise of a leader who would have a much more violent reaction. That leader was Hitler. The Jewish question had been a massive problem in Europe for a long time because there was this question, not of, as, some academics like to depict it, of, I'm trying to think of the case that happened in France, the Dreyfus affair, right?
Yeah.
You have a perfectly loyal soldier, but he happens to come from a Jewish background. And he's being unfairly targeted. That wasn't what was going on. What was going on is that in these Christian societies, you had this not just going along to get along attitude from the Jewish communities, but you had this open hostility. They were selling pornography. They were actively giving out predatory loans and practicing usury. They were trying to forward ideologies and ideas that deliberately threw off the Catholic culture and character of Europe, like the French Revolution or the Enlightenment. And this question, again, goes back to Logos Jesus versus anti-Logos Judaism.
Yeah.
And what World War II afforded was it was such a horrible event that had happened. It was such a horrible tragedy. The millions of lives lost across the face of the earth, from Asia to Africa to Europe, that everyone had been horrified by the war and they wanted to establish peace. But the tragedy of all those lives lost, non-Jewish, Jewish, what have you, everybody,
right.
was it gave finally a moral background for Jews to essentially guilt people into believing what they believe. You have this entire subject in theology after the war. It's called post-Holocaust theology or Holocaust theology. Why is that a phrase? Why is that a term? Well, it's because you had men like Gregory Baum, a laicized homosexual priest who goes to, like, say, the Second Vatican Council, and he says, it's actually another Holocaust if you try to convert Jews. If you try to convert Jewish people, it's actually a second Holocaust. And you're killing them. Why? I want Jews to have eternal life. I don't want Jews to die. Right. I don't want to hurt. I've never wanted to hurt a Jewish person in my entire life. That's never been a desire of mine. So why, when I'm trying to save them, is that a second Holocaust? And why is Jewish identity specifically seen as anti-Catholic, and that if one becomes Catholic and accepts the gospel, they are thwarting their Jewish identity? Right. I think this is put very well by a famous convert who I really love a lot of her books, Dr. Rhonda Shervin. And she's on the Coming Home Network on EWTN, and she's describing her experience becoming Catholic. And she said, as a Jew, I could become a Satanist, I could become a Hindu, I could be a Buddhist, but I couldn't be Catholic. I couldn't accept Jesus Christ, and I couldn't accept the church that he founded. Why? It's because that means she accepted the cross. that means she accepted the cross that Caiaphas spat at, that Caiaphas seemed to murmur at and gnash his teeth at. That last stumbling block, that last cornerstone in her heart gave way, and she accepted the Messiah that had been foretold by all the prophets. And so the Holocaust as an event is used deliberately. And it's funny, you know, I'll be the one called the anti-Semite,
Right.
but I want Jews to accept the gospel and be saved. And these people want to use the Holocaust to prevent the salvation of the Jewish people inside the Catholic Church. They want nothing more than to perpetuate the tyranny that the rabbi has over the Jewish community at large in keeping them away from the Messiah who loves and knows every single one of their names. And I've made it my life's mission to hopefully bring the gospel in some small way to the Jewish people.
This is, you know, this was part that was wild to me was, and I'm sure you're familiar with who he is. There's a lot of these guys that do these, you know, for lack of better words, like tricking God. It's like, you know, we record this video. This is what we do on the Sabbath to you know, to honor God. And in one of those videos, one of those guys went so far as to say like, oh, a Jew can't convert to Christianity. Like, he just like, that's an absolute. That's like, that's, and now I don't know how widespread that belief is, but he's a pretty prominent guy on one of the, you know, on social media. So for him to just say that so openly, he's like, oh, it's impossible. And he treated it like a joke, was like, that's wild. But at the same time, you can kind of see that in terms of basically every other religion. There's a lot more of a, you can see it, converts going both ways from like Islam. I know there's like a famous instance where a guy, a guy comes forward and he becomes Christian, and he was like, I cannot believe that I had not dug deeper into the Quran, and I'm glad that he found Jesus. But it's like, you're spot on. It's very non-existent seeing the conversion outside of that. So wanted to make it your mission, but are you prepared to be called anti-Semite for the rest of your life?
I am.
Okay.
I am. If it results in the, if it results, blah, I couldn't speak for a moment there.
You're good.
If it results in the conversion of one Jewish person, my life will be complete. That's all I care about.
Yeah.
And it's not because I'm converting them. I'm not converting anybody. I don't have the power to compel anyone's heart. But if I can give witness to my faith to one person, Jewish, not Jewish, it doesn't matter. I want to save everybody equally.
Yeah.
But if I can evangelize one person and help one person to move a little closer to Jesus, my life will be fully complete. They can call me whatever they want.
Yeah.
But my name is Catholic. That's my name. They can call me Nazi. They can call me fascist. They can call me anti-Semite. God knows. I'm going to say this right now. I've struggled with hatred. I've made bad jokes before. I've made crass comments. I'm sure I will continue to struggle with those things for the rest of my life at certain instances.
Yeah.
But God knows our hearts, and God knows what we ultimately desire. And my ultimate desire is nothing but love for every single one of his children. And when I see an entire section of the population that is having the gospel withheld from them, my heart gives way to despair and sorrow. I can't imagine how many people need to know that Christ loves them and died for them, because I didn't know that for the longest time in my life. And I was a lapsed Christian, right?
Right.
But I didn't know how much Jesus wanted and desired me. And so to think that there's an entire population, there's an entire ethnicity on the face of the earth that doesn't know how much Jesus loves them, that breaks my heart, man. And that can't continue. That has to stop.
Right. No, and you know, when you look into a bit more of the actual kind of like, I think it's the Knesset. I don't know if that's the right way you pronounce it. You know, I think their Orthodox sect has continually tried to outlaw like the evangelization, you know, the spreading of Christian beliefs. I think that's been multiple times they've tried to outlaw that. And I think the part that probably hit home for me, that ramped me from going from like a MAGA tard or conservatard or whatever you want to call it. Because let's be honest, a lot of the people in the conservative group are liberals convincing themselves they're like conservative or whatever. But it hit me hard because when I saw in HR 6090 that they were going to be outlawing different Bible verses, I was like, this is like what my dad told me 20 years ago was going to happen, you know. And that's when I knew, like, it kind of clicked to me where I was like, this is when I have to get more involved. we are here in the country of America that was born out of a Christian ideology, right, is now almost 300 years later going to outlaw certain Bible verses because we don't want to offend certain people because it's going to be deemed hateful. I mean, that's how you know we're no longer a Christian nation. We have separated ourselves so much from that we're now looking at like, well, in order to be PC, and that's when you kind of realize like at the center of this country, it's not Christ. It's something else. Whether it's Satan or it's just secularism. I mean, you could kind of put a couple different things in that box. It became clear to me, and that's when I was like, okay, things have to change, and that's kind of what ramped it up for me as well too. And I feel the same way on that aspect, especially with the hatred. That's one thing that I spoke about not too long ago, as it pertains to Wignats as well too, because on two ends, I want the Wignats to not hold hate in their heart, but I also find that problem even inside the Christian nationalist group, especially as it comes to race, where it's like, guys, trust me, like I can't see him being on the highway either for the same reasons, but it's not because I hate these people. It's just because I recognize and acknowledge that like they are not as culturally compatible with the way that we would prefer our society to run. And that's one major issue that I think is still splitting the CN, where you see that's like these kind of growing fights between like people like Joel Webbin and Stonequire. And I'm going to be interviewing Michael Spangler, who's a bit more overt on the race realism aspect. So I'm kind of curious, and you kind of spoke to a little bit, where are you at in that journey of just like, as it pertains to the mixture of being pro-white and also pro-Christian and how you kind of balance those two ideals?
It's funny. St. John Paul II and even Pope Leo recently has explicitly affirmed that every single Christian, made in this image of God has a right to preserve their heritage and a right to preserve their race. It is a right and it's a duty. And anyone who tells you that it's not doesn't know their Bible, and they don't know what Christianity has taught for the past 2,000 years. This comes from liberalism. This comes from neoliberalism, where we're just all expected to be put in the giant melting pot and mixed together into whatever brown mush comes out. But that doesn't appreciate the fact that each one of us, each one of our races, is made explicitly in this image of God that belongs to a larger tapestry of the human family.
Yeah. And
when any corner of that tapestry is cut out, it destroys the beauty and the true unity of the human race. It's kind of like the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel, or the false unity that the Antichrist wants to promote, is one where we're just all mixed together. There can be no race. That means there's going to be racism, right? There can be no distinct peoples. That means there's going to be hatred and conflict. So we just need to mix everyone together. But the unity that Christ offers is a deeper unity, and it's a deeper unity of hearts. It's a deeper unity of faith. And that is not one that is built upon the flesh, but one that is built upon the spirit. And so it's ironic because the anti-race realists, they are actually the, not to pull the whole, they're the real racists. They are the real racists.
It's the Democrats.
It's the Democrats, right? But they are the real racists. They hate the natural beauty of God's creation when he made all the distinct peoples of the earth, and they want to wipe that away, and they don't see it as significant. Whereas I look at it and I see the fact that we have art pieces from Michelangelo, right? The fact that we have art pieces from, sort of the Greeks, from the Romans, from all these different cultures across the face of the earth, from Japan, from China, that is the human family.
Yeah.
We're pieces of art and we're irreplaceable. And to treat human beings as little cogs that can just be shifted around and switched out, right? Like pairs of shoes. I can't think of anything more inhuman than that. So I challenge these anti-race realists. It's like, if anything, you are the ones that are more anti-human because you don't see these distinct facets of the human race as being precious in the sight of God, whereas I do. And the problem is, you then get the other side, the Stonequire guys. I don't like those guys. I think that they are actually hateful. I think that, they go another way where they say, well, only this section of the human family is beautiful, and the rest are evil, and they're degenerate, and they're gross. Those people are your brothers. Those people are also made in the image and likeness of God. And if you deny them their human dignity, then you deny Christ himself. And so many are incapable of the real Christ-like approach on this topic, but it's neither an erasure of identity or a building up of walls against the rest of the human family, but rather it is a true appreciation for the unity of faith that we have as Christians, all being our distinct and beautiful races.
Yeah. And you know, and now I don't know if I'd go so far as to say that with Stonechoir, but I hear you, you know, because there are some other takes where, I mean, it's like hits you like a shotgun, you know, you're like, okay, so there's like a lot there. But the thing that really convinced me a lot was when they went to the IQ aspect and they related it in terms of the applications of Christ and how some of these ideals that we do have in terms of taking some of these kind of very high IQ concepts, like especially like with the Trinity, right? And you're talking about like early on, having to break that down and explain it to people. There is an element there where I do see like if there is a specific sect of human beings that's predisposed to not even being capable of possessing certain IQs, would they have ever understood some of these concepts? And so, but on those ends, how meaningful is that in terms of how you should treat them comprehensively? Like, I wouldn't go that far because I'm right there with you. You know, I do think that every human being does deserve dignity. I think that's pretty explicit from the Bible as well. And so, you know, from that though, the race realist aspect, I think, is going to be a continuing problem. I think this is going to be one of the problems we'll battle probably the next 3 or 4 years as the CN kind of figures out who it is, you know, because we're going to have some probably competing voices. And it seems like when Joel Webben and Stonechoir, they are competing voices for the same kind of movement. Hopefully it doesn't fracture into 2 different movements and we get more balkanization inside of it. It's not what we need. But I guess we'll move on to the big ticket item here. And I hate to kind of change it up so much. Also, big shout out to Liberal Chad as well. He donated 5 gifted, I believe. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it, brother. The story, the whale in the room, if you will, elephant in the room, the Jubilee debate. How did that change you? I mean, I read through a bit of the Catholic Herald article, and it kind of came off to me as if like you maybe went into it with a bit more of edge than you had expected to get consequences for. So just go ahead and walk through that with me. You know, how did you go in with it? How did you feel afterwards? And what have you taken from it moving forward from there?
There definitely was a bit more of sort of a trolling aspect that I had approached it with because Mehdi Hassan is not a serious person. Right. And the moment I saw that and that he was not someone who I think is, you know, we say this term as a joke, but it's very real, a real human being, right? Somebody who is authentic, someone who is straightforward with you in their approach. They're not trying to safeguard anything. They're not trying to withhold anything from you, but they're bearing forth how they actually are. He's not. He's a journo, and all journalists are scum. Not literally all, like our Catholic
I would
ones,
say
but all journalists are scum. You know, I'm right there with Soren Kierkegaard, which says, if my daughter fell into prostitution, I would not despair over her because I would know and hope that she could have the mercy of the Lord. Right. But if my son became a journalist, I would disown him a year later. You know, where there's this idea that journalists are very disingenuous people and they have to run stories and they prostitute themselves for information, and oftentimes that's false information.
Right.
And so any way that they can control the narrative, any way that they can basically ruin people's lives and go after people and target people, they will, in order to forward their own nefarious ideology and their own evil worldview. And I knew that Mehdi Hassan was that exact person. And so I wasn't concerned with dealing with him in this authentic way because I know he's not authentic. And so I definitely went into it with more of a trolling aspect, but it wasn't that I was trying to go from an aspect of, I'm going to call myself a fascist. It's edgy. It's what have you. In fact, I want to take back something I said a little bit about an individual who commented on my event. I praised him, but I want to take back a little bit of the praise, and that's Keith Woods. And I do got a bone to pick with him. He said, I was trying to be like Nick Fuentes. I'm not trying to be like Nick. Nobody can be Nick, dude. Nick is an
enigma. Great
man of our time. I wouldn't for an instant try to be like him or try to steal his thunder or try to grift off of him or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's very crass, and I think that's very short-sighted for him to say something like that about me. You know nothing about me. You know nothing about who I am or what I stand for. And so to say that I'm trying to basically grift off Nick or just get, points with him or whatever is completely asinine and ridiculous. It's not. I love and admire Nick, and I'm inspired by him. I'm not trying to steal his spotlight or his position.
Yeah. Well, I was curious, were these recent comments from Keith? I follow Keith quite a lot. I'm not sure if that was recent or not.
It was when the whole controversy went down, and Nick did have some wonderful constructive criticism for me. He said this old saying I've heard my entire life, and the moment I heard it, I was like, dude, I've heard that my entire life, and I forgot rule number 1, which is know your audience. And he's absolutely right. I should have known it wasn't so much about talking to Medi as much as it was talking to people who are onlookers and aren't really familiar with sort of the nuances or the subtext or the meta narrative behind a lot of these terms used. They just heard the F word and they freaked out, right? Right. And so Nick's advice I took completely to heart. I was very thankful for him for that result. And that's why I super chatted him recently with a bigger super chat. It wasn't to just blow the money that people had generously given me, but it was to say truly thank you. Like I did take that to heart, and it's a lesson that I'm applying more. But yeah, Keith decided to just kind of kick me while I was down. And while I agree with some of the substance of what he said about, you have to understand, like, there's normies watching. I completely agree with that aspect. To insinuate that I'm trying to like steal Nick's thunder or what have you I'm offended by that quite frankly. It's a word I like to say a lot, but quite frankly, I'm very offended by that. No, I've seen people crash out in this movement because they were trying to be like Nick or they were trying to steal Nick's spotlight. And for anyone who's a loyal Groyper, that's rule number 1, dude. You don't do that. I've seen Franson, Jaden, all those kinds of guys go because they wanted to use this movement for their like own kind of glory or what have you. And that's not the kind of role that we need to be in as creators. We need to be supporting Nick and be behind his mission and his vision.
No, 100%. And that's another element too, which is, as I've learned the more and more, one of the common themes here is how often the adjacent and the allies are constantly arguing with each other. I think I even saw, I was trying to, I think I was coming through just to re-update the outline because I like to keep things fresh. I like to hear some of your recent stuff as well too, so I can keep recent stuff in brain. And I'd seen that you had kind of went back and forth with Chad Champion a little bit about, oh man, I think this was about not the wife guy.
Oh, was it the Newsom stuff?
Say it again.
Was it about the Newsom stuff?
Yes, that's right.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
Yes.
I can shed some spotlight on them. I've got no beef with Chad Champion. We're fine. We're totally fine. I've got zero beef with him. The reason I was kind of crashing out that day and I was getting into arguments is there were people who like unironically were like trying to embrace this like Spencerian liberalism. Like it wasn't like the Newsom 28, like we're trying to troll JD Vance, right? Like we're trying to like get this guy to not be the Republican nominee, and we're trying to hold the Republican Party kind of their feet to the fire and hold them accountable for the fact that they've betrayed us, because they aren't any different than the Democrats at this point. I mean, if you're exactly the same as the Dems, what is the point of if I vote Newsom 28? You're the exact same, if not worse, because you're traitors, right? And so that I was completely always on board with that joke. I did kind of take issue when people were saying I'd unironically vote for him. I think if you were to like maybe and I'm thinking conceptually here, like cast your ballot in order to kind of crash the right so that they could be truly conservative, I don't think that would maybe be as immoral as I had said that night. And I would kind of walk that back a little bit. But I was having a lot of people who were like unironically saying to me, like, we need to be liberal now and we need to like embrace homosexuality and stuff like that. I'm like, over my dead body, dude. I'm not doing that shit. Absolutely not. But that wasn't Chad Champion. I'm cool with Chad Champion. He's totally fine.
That's good. That's good. And that's me, trying to get an idea of like who everybody is. But Keith Woods in particular, and I'm trying to remember the moment that it happened, but it seems like for the last couple of months, he's kind of distanced himself, I think, a little bit from Nick. I think he's become a bit more of a white identitarian, more so than Christian nationalists, and I don't know Keith's beliefs, so I don't want to put anything, out of my mouth that's untrue, but at least that's how it comes off to me. And I see that, and that is, not to keep it on race, but I guess I'm curious, in your opinion, because I just talked to Tyler Russell on Tuesday, and I plan on reaching out to Beardson here soon. And funny enough, I actually saw you guys were all together recently. Who are some of these guys in this space that you consider like some of your top allies? Like I got followed by, what's his name? Specco. And I think I want to try to reach out to him soon too.
My boy, my brother.
Okay, good. He's a good guy.
He's a great guy. Salt of the earth. His conversion testimony is single-handedly one of the most inspiring things I've ever listened to in my entire life. I mean, I've never seen someone just like come out of like just the depths of despair like he has. And any single time I'm like feeling down, I always remember like what he's been through, because he's been through a lot. Awesome. But the fact that he is a family man and he's a faithful Catholic, like it's like, dude, if he can do it, like anybody can. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. No, I see his post with his dad all the time, and it cracks me up because I love him. And I'm like, that was me and my dad. He had a recent one with like a PS2 and a PS3, and I was like, that literally looks like my Christmas photo, like 7 years ago. Like,
dude, that's so
awesome
real.
Stuff.
Mid 2000s gaming and early 2010s gaming was so goated too. Let's be honest, that was like the peak right there.
I know and I think Beardson has a video. It's like, I knew he doesn't probably use his YouTube at all anymore, but I looked at one of his older YouTube videos. I think it was a few months ago. He might be the only other person left, like a Groyper that's like left on YouTube. And he had a take on video games, which is, I think a lot of guys are feeling, which is they just suck anymore. You don't get that same kind of feeling, especially not like exactly what you had said. This is not Battlefield 3, like early 2000 era, like gaming. It's kind of gone. And I'm kind of curious, do you think that's more so like gaming just sucking now, or is this because more men feel the desire to have a stronger purpose and games just aren't cutting it out for them anymore?
I'm not really part of the camp that I think disavows video games completely, because I think for some people, and there's a really funny I think this series of memes was called like counter signal memes, and it was like from 4chan and like kind of way like older, like 2016 kind of the political sphere. But there's this guy like crossing his arms, and he's like, video games, that's for degenerates. Real Aryan men watch paint dry. And it's like, that's how it comes off when people like counter signal video games. I'm like, okay, dude, like I'm not going to be staring at the paint drying all day, or reading Julius Evola every waking moment. It's like, it's okay to have hobbies and it's okay to have enjoyment. But where I do slightly agree with their criticism is, if you're playing video games all day and you're not reading your Bible and you're not working out and you're not bettering yourself or doing anything to kind of live out the life that God has given you, then yes, I would agree that that's become an idol in your life. And that's something that I don't think you need to do away with completely unless it's addictive, but you do need to definitely strip down and strip away. I do think really the real problem is video games do just suck now. They have become, I really do blame the rise of esports, but especially the involvement of women in video games that has made really video games just suck completely. And I'm not even talking about like girls playing like Animal Crossing or whatever, that's fine. That's totally all right. But, I see these girls on like esports teams and stuff like that. I'm like, what are we doing? When I was a kid and I'd watch Disney Channel, I used to think like gamer girls were like, she's hot and she plays video games. Whoa, mind blown, dude. But instead I look at it now and it comes off like a cringe DEI, like, girls can do it too kind of thing.
Yeah.
Get the hell out of here, dude. Like, please go do something else, like go to the mall, get yourself a matcha and a Labubu, but stay away from my video games. Okay. That's where the boys are. That's boys turf right there.
See, I can't go to the Labubu. I think I'm Unk here. I'm probably older than you. Because I'm 29. I'll turn 30, at the end of this year. And I see the new Labubu stuff. I'm like, dude, I can't go that far with the matcha and stuff either.
Listen,
I'm too old.
You You got to ride the wave of irony, dude. It's like, I know it's tough, and sometimes I'm becoming old. My power level is draining. These young cats, that I can't keep up with them. But sometimes I'm like, you know what? I don't fully understand it, but we're just riding the wave. Newsom 28. Yeah, like that's how you got to be. Like, and then I'm looking at like some unfunny guy on the timeline, and he's like, are we seriously doing this? And then I post the picture of the Groyper Labubu Vor, and I'm like, you're going in the Labubu immediately. Right. Immediately, you're going in the Labubu.
And I think it's funny. It recently just like it's taken off too. And I'm kind of familiar with matcha because I watch all of these like horror games where like you play as like a barista or whatever, and they're making matcha drinks. So I knew what that was, but I didn't know what the Labubu was. I had to look it up. But you're spot on the women in games. I mean, women don't need to be nearly as much in public life at all, period, across the board. But that's another subject for another story. But you're right, because you see, like, I think it was Dragon Age Veilguard, because I love the Dragon Age series until they destroyed it. And you see, it's like, well, who made this game? And it's like, here's executive director, and it's like 400-pound septum ring, blue hair. Here's the executive creator design, and it's like it's the same image over and over and over again. It's like, oh. No wonder my game is super gay and homoerotic. It's like, oh, that makes a lot more sense now. And it's annoying.
You didn't want the plus size black transgender woman, dude? What's wrong with you? That's like my favorite character.
No, I didn't want the gender scars. I didn't want I didn't want any of that stuff. Like, and it's a joke because it's kind of the same thing that goes along with what you had said earlier about the Jubilee, which is like, how do they not know their audience? How have we gone nearly a decade, 2 decades now, of guys going, I don't want this trash in my video game. And they go, you want more? Got it. I'll send 10. It's like, dude, okay. Like, this is getting aggressive. So people are doing these boycotts and stuff. And it doesn't make sense to me because part of it is like, they're clearly running some of these games into the ground purely just to piss people off. And so we'll move away from video games, for example, because I'm a huge nerd. So like, I love Lord of the Rings. I love Star Wars. I grew up into it, not 7, 8, 9. But that's kind of what it felt like to me. Like, when I grew up at 25, I was supposed to get a cool new Star Wars third trilogy, but I didn't. I got a gay one that basically got raped by feminism. And then same thing with the Lord of the Rings and the Rings of Power. It's like, I'm supposed to be excited for this stuff, and you guys deracinated it to the point where like I have to be against it. And so I'm curious, like, are you nerdy at all? Do you like Lord of the Rings? Where are you at with that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm a huge nerd. Like, I loved being in college, or kind of in college, but mostly high school, like the dungeon master or the game master of all the like D&D games I would play. I'm a huge like RPG guy, so I've got like in that closet over there, I've got like a bunch of different of my old Dungeons and Dragons books and stuff like that. I love Lord of the Rings, love Star Wars. Trying to think what else I got really nerdy over, like Fallout and stuff like that. I mean, all those game franchises I've always loved, and it's the same thing. When Gamergate happened, that was kind of my introduction into politics because I was not a political guy. I called myself a libertarian or an anarchist, not even because I was that politically involved. I just wanted to be left alone. I just wanted to be able to, play my games and grill my burgers. Can I just grill for goodness sake, right? And I'm sitting out there with a boomer dad shirt, like what I have on. But it went from that, being in high school and being this young kid who was really not politically involved at all, to then one day I open the internet and it's like I'm being called a sexist, a racist, a Nazi, a this, a that.
Yep.
All because I want my video games to be the way that they've always been, right? And this whole audience of disturbed feminists and homosexuals just like coming out of the woodwork and saying, we're in gaming now too, and we're here to stay. It was a very awakening moment because I thought to myself, if they're attacking video games, which I care about so much, and they're a huge part of my world, what else are they attacking? And suddenly I started to realize that this was going on a greater societal scale than just video games. And at that point, I love nerd stuff. I love nerd culture, but it's like, dude, nerd culture can be salvaged. I'm trying to save Western civilization here. Like, I'm trying to save, like, I'm trying to be Oswald Spengler Caesar, and I'm trying to turn back the clock, and it's like one of those like dark Hyperborea memes where I'm trying to save, you know, white Christian civilization from teetering to destruction, and like, you know, Wasted is playing in my head. And it's like, I don't have time for thinking about the video games right now. There will be plenty of video games when we reestablish Agartha, okay? But, you know, I'm tabling that for now. But yeah, I mean, I very much felt that way because, I don't know, video games just used to be so much like fun and chill, and it was to escape a world that was otherwise chaotic. And then I felt like the world was being brought into my video games. And that was kind of that was a motif. That was a piece I did not like at all.
And it started getting a bit more aggressive too. Like, I think when I really started to notice it take up a bit was when the first season of The Boys dropped. I don't know if you've watched any of The Boys or not. And you just know that Homelander's meant to be Trump, and all these other actors that they're bringing in are also like these different versions of, you know, like Laura Loomer, and I think like AOC and some other individuals. And that's when I was like, okay, this is like, politics becoming pop culture is actually going full send right now. And I think a lot of people kind of articulated it in a way that like COVID kind of forced people to pay attention to what was going on, even when they didn't want to, because there's nothing else to do. And that basically made politics a lot more prominent with like younger generations and just in general. And I think that was ultimately bad overall for politics too, because now we have a lot more people sharing their opinion who otherwise, you know, should not be. I mean, they can't even read. Like, and that's part of the issue. And also, big super chat as well from Michael. Thank you very much. You donated $35. Thank you very much for that. Let me put it on the screen again. But you're right on that though. The boys will be okay. Like, I know there's going to be guys who are going to be fighting in the trenches for video games. I don't have to worry about that. You know, like I know they're going to be there fighting for video games. It's Christianity that needs the help. You know, that's what needs to be bailed out, and it needs water bailed. And I'm kind of curious, and I'll put it on the screen here in a little bit too. Did you see any of Josh Vandernoord talking to Charlie Kirk? It was kind of going viral a little bit before we went live today.
No, actually, I didn't. This is new news to me, so we should react to it. Honestly, I'd love to see this. Yeah, I'm gonna put it up. This is awesome. So this is let me pull up the Discord and make it a bit bigger. The guys are from outside the Overton who I've had on the channel before, and I would love to share this. I'm gonna pull it up too. They you find the right one. Let me see. Is it this one? Yeah, it's this one. It'll show the live stats of the live stream. Let me pull it away. The funny thing about it is it's from outside the Overton. Josh Vandernoord, Zeb Boykin, he basically wears a yarmulke, pretends he's Jewish, and asks Charlie Kirk a question. So they labeled it Undercover Goy. I think it's like the title of their live stream. But I have it pulled up here and I'm going to grab it. It's like 3.5 minutes long, but we'll see what Charlie Kirk had to say about this. And let me know if you can hear it too. Oh, you got it.
Up here. Make sure the audio's okay. Okay, let's let it rip.
Thank you for coming, Charlie. And I had a quick question.
Can you hear that?
I can hear it.
Perfect.
Okay. About anti-Semitism online. Another question here they asked about Candace Owens, and you know, I'm a big fan of you. I was a big fan of her, but she's obviously been going down this anti-Semitic bent. And through her, I'm kind of finding out about these other characters online, like Nick Fuentes. I'm sure you've heard of him. And these people, they've been active for a long time, and it seems like they've just been ignored, which is working, but now they're kind of surging in popularity. And as someone who, I enjoy watching your debates, are they people you'd be willing to engage with and maybe shut them down in a way through a debate or something like that?
Well, I mean, I'll get to debate Candace. But no, look, I'll debate anybody that shows up at our campus events first and foremost. But I do want to take what you say and extrapolate that there is a corner of the internet of people that want to point and blame the Jews for all their problems. Everybody, this is demonic and it's from the pit of hell. And it should not be tolerated. Period. But it goes to a more structural problem of an entire generation that has economic resentment. They don't own anything. They're not getting married. They're not having children. They're depressed. They're anxious. They're staring at their screens all day long. And all of a sudden, your extrapolation of all that is, well, it's the Jews' fault. That is sloppy and shallow thinking.
It is!
And not only that, they say, oh, it's the Jews' fault. Okay, let's kind of play this out. Well, Tuberculosis, that used to kill about 1 billion people. You know, it's a group of Jewish scientists that came up with the antibiotic that cured tuberculosis. How about CPR, the MRI machine? You know, there's over 500 million lives that were saved over the last 50 years because of people that were Jewish scientists that were working on things. They'll never say thank you to the Jews, but they'll always say shame on the Jews. It's weird how that works. And finally, they always blame the Jews for stuff. Jewish people are an ethnicity. So therefore, definitionally, you have people that are secular, Orthodox, religious, that are all over the spectrum. You're trying to blame an entire ethnicity for a singular problem. Hold on, let's take a step back here. Instead of that, what could you possibly do in your own personal life to improve your own state of being? If you are blaming 0.02% of the world's population for all
what can
of
you do
problems,
to improve your own state of being?
That's not going to be good for your soul.
Man,
it's
well,
not good
you know,
for your psychology.
But that's basically it. Like, he doesn't give an answer, you know, to the.
He doesn't give an answer. Well, and again, it's like there's an old 4chan post about how people who are very low IQ don't understand generalizations. When it's like we say the Jews, I'm not talking about, you know, I was in the Boy Scouts and every single Jewish person I ever interacted with was like salt of the earth. Like, they were nice people. Yeah. I still to this day think highly of those particular individuals. They were great people. They were never mean to me. We were in fact great friends and stuff like that. And I still would sit down and have lunch with them to this day. So am I talking about those people when I say the Jews? No, but what I am talking about is that there is this large phenomenon amongst Jewish people to deliberately attack white people and attack Christians. And so when we say the Jews, it's like, yes, it is, because it's a large subsection of them that is doing all these things, right? And he always loves this. I love how these people always love to bring out the tired old line of, oh, well, there's like Reformed, there's Orthodox, there's conservative and secular. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, they still all show up for the same team. They're still genealogically formed by the same rabbis who taught them teachings from the Talmud that say, you're superior, you're better. If anyone tries to ever thwart your power or anything like that, you have the right to kill them, harassate, deracinate them, and do anything that thwarts their group. Why is it that MindGeek is based out of Israel, the largest porn owner in the world, yet pornography is not allowed within Israel?
Yep.
Run that one by me again, right? Why is it that you know, why is it that it's like every anti-Catholic demonstration I see a Berg or a Stein next to the name? Why is it that all the academic books that blame the Holocaust on the Catholic Church, when Catholics literally shed their blood and their lives to save Jews during the Holocaust, is always written by a rabbi or a Berg or a Stein, right? It's because Jews are doing these things to us. It's Jewish people doing these things that attack us, that deracinate us. So when Charlie Kirk's like, well, what can you do to self-improve? Well, I could talk about Christianity, but in the state of Florida, I could get arrested for, you know, saying who did the crucifixion, right? Or, you know, maybe I could try to better myself and have a better relationship with my wife, but, oh no, there's internet pornography everywhere. Well, I guess I could try to, you know, oh man, I hurt my leg recently. Why don't we strap me on to opioids that are put out by pharmaceutical companies that are owned by Goldberg and Steen, right? And then I can get addicted to those and die of a drug overdose in my car in Appalachia, right? Give me a fucking break, dude. Excuse my language. I'm trying not to curse, but give me a fucking break. Like, this is so unbelievably disingenuous and dishonest from these people. The whole reason that we've become awoken on this issue is not because I watched a Nick Fuentes video and I became brainwashed. It's because someone like Nick was speaking to what I was seeing in my reality. And the more and more I went on and I saw the need that, why is it that it's like, you know, Christians especially will be so like militant and attacking atheists and attacking all these groups. But if a Jewish person does anything, well, we have to be hands off, dude, or we have to approach this with caution. Why? They're anti-Christian. They're opposing us. I oppose people who are opposed to Christianity. I'm not going to give you the kitty gloves because you come from a special background or special magical super blood or whatever. That's absolutely ridiculous.
And I think the biggest thing too that sticks out is when I look at it and I go, So where was Charlie Kirk the last, I don't know, 20 years when anti-white rhetoric was running rampant, and we don't have task force for anti-whiteism, right? We have task force for literally every other thing before we're worried about anti-white stuff. And but again, shout out to Josh Vandernoord and Zeb Boykin. They run outside the Overton, and it was a nice touch. It was hard to see in the video, but Josh was wearing a yarmulke. He was trying to go undercover. I know the video is hard to see.
I still want to get that Trump yarmulke, dude, and have it like right here. You know, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, make America great again. Well, we were thinking about logos because we want to change one up, and one of the guys from the mod team said like to do an actual Atlas one. And I had seen posted on X, somebody has a Fell For It Again award shouldered by Atlas. It's like Fell For It Again. He's like the MAGA hat. And I was like, dude, that's beautiful.
Dude, that's so real. That's
Right?
so real, honestly. Well, because I mean, it's like Stephen Miller, you know, it's like he's one of the good ones. He's one of our guys. And he's like making anti-white comments about like DC. And I'm like, really? He's one of the good ones? One of those, you know, guys on our side? I don't think so. That completely shattered your rhetoric, right? I mean, this administration with Trump has been a complete embarrassment. And I think it's set the right back like 20 years. I mean, this is like George W. Bush levels of bad. I think even Bush had more aura than Trump does right now. I mean, John Miller posted a picture on the timeline. Bro, because he can't hang out with Epstein anymore and like sleep with 14-year-old girls, his adrenochrome like levels are lessening and he looks like an old tired man. Like he looks pathetic at this point.
Right. Well, this was like the same spin they tried to do when this was after he had met with Putin. He's either after or like as he's walking down the tarmac. And they did a time lapse and he's like left, right? He's zigzagging all over the place. And just like a month before, we got the thing that was, you know, he's got the vein issues, like swelling in his feet. And it's like, I mean, he's going to be 80 some years old. He's going to be 82, I think, before he leaves office. Like there's an obvious, the same thing that we were doing with Biden, which was very obvious, is clearly happening to Trump. And I think you can even also attribute that to all of this kind of back and forth and like the anger, right? With like the Epstein stuff. Are we still talking about Epstein? Like that was like the worst optics Trump has ever had. And it's kind of remained. It's like stuck ever since there when you drop something like that. Because how can you say something that is so far outside the realm of what your base clearly wants? And that was like, I think to most people was a slap in the face. There wasn't another super chat. I just missed it because we're getting so many chats. So forgive me, but it was a $10 super chat. Thank you very much for that. They asked if they can still play Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah, why not?
They were asking you. So that's what I wanted to.
Oh yeah, for sure, dude, for sure. Go ahead. It's a good game. It's a good game.
Yeah, I like the KOTOR, some of the original ones.
Oh, dude, those OG ones on the OG Xbox. My cousin, he got some from like a family friend or whatever, and we used to play on his like original Xbox, like Knights of the Old Republic or whatever. That game is so goated. It
blew me away when I played it all on PC. And then I had a friend who had it on Xbox. So when I went over to his house and he was playing it, I was like, they make this for console? And then I realized I didn't make it for PlayStation. So I was like, oh, dang it. Okay. I guess I'm just sitting out this one. You know, and I guess we'll go with that too. Charlie Kirk, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Elon Musk. Where are we at with all of them? Like, I can't stand any of them. And I'm kind of curious. Candace, I think, is helpful in some regards. And I say that as like, I think Ian Carroll's much better at this, but being kind of a ramp, you know, to some of these ideas. Right. And I guess before I'll turn the question over, I'll go back to what I wanted to say too, in terms of Nick and Andrew Tate. The reason why I think a lot of people resonate with them, even though the message is very edgy or it can come off like, again, like a shotgun, like there's just so much there and it kind of shocks you. For me, it was a breath of fresh air. For me, it was like I'd gone 20 some years on life support. You know, it's like, like I'm barely alive. And then I hear Nick talk and I'm like, you know, like I wake up and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, okay, yeah, that's real. The same way that not fully, but when Andrew Tate talks about women and the presence and like the effemination and men being cucks, like that to me is like, like, yes, there's somebody speaking what I feel and can see, but no one else is willing to touch. But on those ends, I'm kind of curious for all the people who don't do that, who gatekeep in all the rhetoric. And we can even throw in Seth Dillon and Joel Berry in there as well. I can't stand them either. Where are we at with all these guys and what should we do with them?
So I think in regards, you brought up a lot of different individuals, and there's varying degrees of what needs to be done. I think all of them we need to see as ops. We need to see every single one of them as some kind of op, because Tucker Carlson is CIA, dude. He's a CIA op. He is very clearly trying to direct the right in a certain way away from the talk towards Judaism. And it's just like, oh, it's anti-Zionism, right? Well, that is a code word. That is an out. That's an easy, like, no one's going to get offended if you say Zionism, right? But it's a very interesting tell when, you have like Jews on social media saying like, oh, so 95% of Jews? Yeah, because the issue is Judaism. That's the underlying issue. You guys see us as inferior, and you have an open hostility towards our Western Christian culture, right? And they realize, these intelligent agencies and these powers that be realize people are waking up to that fact. And so they have to get people like Candace, Tucker Carlson, all these narrative controllers to do damage control, or to like mix in stupid stuff like the Brigitte Macron thing. She's not trans, dude. She's a woman, right? And something like that. I mean, literally, like, I hope Candace likes jail, because that's where she's going after she loses that case. But it's so? Like, not literally. I'm just kind of messing around or being hyperbolic. She's probably just going to have to like pay a huge fine, but she's going to lose for sure. I mean, the deck is stacked against her. But it's one of those things where, Candace is an op, right? I mean, she had, Milo Yiannopoulos on her show, and Milo, real Catholic, by the way, Milo is there, talking about Mossad propaganda as it stands in regards to our own bishops, right? Our own cardinals, saying, oh, 80% of our cardinals are gay. What the hell are you talking about? That that's not true. You're just trying to spread fake narratives against Christ Church because you're Jewish, dude. You're not Catholic, right? And so they act as an op or a bulwark against a real, authentic reaction of the right against Jewish power. And they're trying to kind of control the narrative because they know it's like a floodgate, right? It's open. Everybody knows about Israel. Everyone has seen the videos of Gazan children being literally sniped and shot through the head and bombed. And once you can't control something like that, you have to do PR. You have to do damage control. I mean, I have a marketing degree. I know how this stuff goes. If you can't control a story anymore, you have to control how it's delivered to the public. And if people make it this amorphous, oh, it's Zionism and America first just means we want to put all countries, that we shouldn't be giving foreign aid to any country. Okay, well, last time I checked, I don't think the Swiss are exercising control over our government and puppeting it. I think it's Judaism. I think it is Jews who are doing this, right? And so this is fundamentally the issue at play. And all Candace Owens and all Charlie Kirk want to do is be sort of the back end, right? Maybe they'll kind of throw some bones for like white identitarianism, like Charlie Kirk has. Maybe they'll kind of throw some bones for the anti-Israel stuff, but it's as a means to control the inevitability of our side actually winning and the authentic reaction that is happening after so many of us have been put down for years and cast out into the outer darkness.
Yeah, and it makes me, you're spot on with them being ops, right? And that is kind of curious, the positioning, especially because Tucker Carlson obviously never responded to Nick. I think he's going to try to do it, and it's probably his best move too. I'll give him credit for that. I think him just, absorbing it, doing the Dylan Mulvaney PR, just disappearing and coming back in a month is probably the best option. But he had on Dave Callum, right? This is, again, like, we're maybe just like 2 weeks removed from this big kind of debacle between him and Nick. And Dave Callum, again, it's in the same kind of vein of thinking, which is this idea that perhaps we sided with the wrong people in World War II, right? This kind of revisiting the lies of World War II, but he's clearly unwilling to go to the full length of which the battle has been getting waged, which has been for thousands of years, which is on the grounds of Christianity versus Judaism versus, and then a little bit later on, Islam. And that is like the crux of like where the majority of these problems are. And it's so, I think to me, it's a very like, you only need to have like a room temperature IQ to recognize there's 3 large Abrahamic faiths, but only 2 are ever talked about. And
it's true.
just by omission, you have to go, well, what reason why is this not talked about? Is it maybe because it's less prominent? And it's like, well, no, that doesn't make sense because it's strongly tied to the other two in very many ways, historically included. And then you have to begin to go, no, there's clearly either some cover happening or there's some kind of obfuscation here to prevent. And again, it goes to the very classic saying, which is, if you wish to know who rules over you, look to those you can't criticize. And I think most people right now, especially with the recession of censorship over like transgenderism and blacks in general, there's basically one group left standing. And you're going, why are they the only ones you still can't talk about? And I think for most people, it's an easy assumption to go, okay, maybe there is something else there. And obviously you have to avoid, being banned and censored off the internet. But that's kind of the issue though, too, is our guys who don't have strong financial backing. We don't have strong, actual, meaningful, like positioning inside any levers of power or near any kind of levers of power. Now, I know there's kind of a bit of a discussion in terms of Nick being a Fed, right? But the way that some people have kind of talked about it, right, and I think it's kind of laughable too. The Zev, same guys from outside the Overton and many others, they do think, especially with how quickly Nick came back with Tucker and some of the knowledge in other instances too, they do have this feeling that maybe there is people already in government that are very open to where Nick is at and maybe full on agree with him. And maybe that's part of the reason why, like, there's some level of transfer of information. Like, who else would you give that information to if you were a Groyper, right? It's like, just give it to Nick.
Right.
That's the top dog. And so I'm kind of curious, what's the easy kind of pushback when someone goes, Nick's a Fed, and why is he so in the know, in your opinion?
The fact is, Nick has been thrown off almost every single platform, and he only recently was able to come back to really Twitter at most, right? Which is great. I'm thankful for, but it's like that was years after us lobbying to get him back on there, right? Yeah. He's deplatformed everywhere. He is debanked. He, literally wasn't allowed to fly for the longest time. And you have to think logically, if someone like that was a Fed, you would want them everywhere. You would want them on Instagram. You would want them on X. You would want them on YouTube. You would want them on every platform to try and kind of leverage power and control whatever narrative they were trying to put forth or accomplish whatever mission that they were trying to kind of put forward. But instead, what do we see with Nick? Nick is not given those leverages of power. He's had to do everything kind of alternatively and through different means. Dude, you can't even buy one of his damn hats without having to pay for crypto. Right. Right. And I love those hats. Right. And everyone loves those hats. But it's like, why is a payment processor not even allowed to be used to buy these cool hats? It's due to the fact that he is someone who is really being persecuted by the regime. And so anyone who's trying to say that he's a Fed, I will be so bold as to say, I think you're a Fed. I think you are an op. At the very least, even if you aren't a Fed, you are someone who is actively trying to aid and abet people who are. And I see you as an op and an enemy. Because if you can't see what Nick has gone through and the way that he suffered, and you come away from it being like, I think he's working for the government, I think you're an ass. I don't think you know what you're talking about at that point, because somebody who is in that kind of position of power would not be treated the way he's been treated. They would get the Tucker or Candace treatment. They would get the funding, right? And so, in regards to him having insiders in the government or what have you, I think he knows knowledgeable people. I think he's got a network of people that he knows who to turn to and who he can trust for information or what have you. That's hard. Right. That's not being a Fed, though. That's just knowing how to network. I have people that I network with who are in high positions, or people who maybe we don't collab on things openly, but kind of behind the scenes, we talk more about like ways to go about content or shift the narrative online, especially with all the Catholic stuff that we do. And I would be the last person to be accused of being a Fed. It's like, I just lost my damn job. That's not like, that's not really something that like a Fed's going to have happen. Right. But in the case of Nick, if you can't look at his persecution and acknowledge that's someone who's fighting for the truth, I don't take you seriously, to be honest.
Yeah. And I'm 100% there too. I think there's no way I can look at the way that things have been going zoom in, zoom out. There's no way I can look at it that it even comes off halfway believable. The only aspect would be the information, but then at the same time, I think along the lines of you do, which is like, dude, the guy's basically been obliterated and he's been clawing his way for the last 8 years. Like, of course, he's probably going to have some extreme ways to pull some information that you wouldn't know about. Like, it only just, it tracks, it kind of parallels there. And on that too, it looks like Nick is going to get ready to probably lead what we're going to call Groyper War 3 with this continued, advance against JD Vance. And so I am fully moved to the accelerationist position, and I'm curious what your take is on that. Have you moved to full accelerationist as well?
Accelerationist in what way?
In the way that you would ultimately vote for Newsom in the hope that with the negativities that would come from that presidency, it would garner the Republican base to move further to the right where we would need it to be to actually get what we want.
I wasn't a believer at first. I am now. Yeah. I'd completely agree, because that is the only thing that's going to snap the right into shape. I said this earlier to a friend, but it doesn't matter how critical you are of the right or neocons or the teal establishment. If you're casting a vote for them or you're politically complicit in what they're doing, that speaks louder than words. That speaks louder than words. And so what they say and what they think at that moment is, I can do anything to you and I still know I'm going to have your vote, right? Name a single position that Vance is better than Newsom on, right? Tax stuff, maybe.
Yeah. Economics
Vance,
barely.
Yeah, economics barely. Vance is pro-abortion. He's pro-IVF. He's pro-gay. So social conservatism's out the window. Catholic, by the way, right? He's not Catholic at all. He's a fake Catholic, and I will stand on that position.
Word.
He is completely still pro-immigration. He is completely trying to cement the death of 2016, right? The authentic reaction that happened that got Trump elected. He is trying to cement the death of actual MAGA politics. I'm not talking about cheap foam fingers and stupid hats. I'm talking about an authentic reaction against the crap that we had been subjected to under like John McCain, under George W. Bush, under Mitt Romney, and all these fake conservatives, right? He wants to cement the death of that authentic reaction, and we can't let that happen. And so, you know what? If the Republican Party's got to burn, I'm going to sit that out there with the lawn chair and a twisted tea in my right hand and a cigar in my left, and I'm going to watch it burn down. It's got to go.
I'm right there with you. Like, I was so with this that I was willing to even go vote for Kamala last election. Ultimately until probably about 2 weeks until the election. Sorry if the audience heard this like 20 times this week. But right before, I basically was like, I kind of let myself get convinced by a few people who are like, no, like we have to go incremental. Politics largely in the modern era is all incremental. We're not going to get into these kind of big, nothing ever happens type stuff, right? So I ultimately kind of, went back on that, and then, I just had to put it in. I was like, okay, let's get it in. I wasn't hopeful, and turns out I was right. A lot of people were right on that aspect. And to knock it a little bit further with JD Vance, a story came out, I think it was from AF Post, I saw it today. He's been on 8 vacations. He's not even been VP for 7 months. I think I saw that from the AF Post. And in lockstep, he's identical to Ted Cruz. I mean, like, it's the same stuff over and over again. And I'm right there with you, where it's like, the Republican Party's not represented me since, I don't know, maybe since I've even paid attention to politics. And you can see that continuously with like, who are their top speakers? Nala Ray, here's another porn star. Oh, there's another porn star over there. Here, let's get this Hindu lady to sing at the RNC. How about this guy named Kesten Bomberg Stein? He can go speak to this too. Like, I mean, it's just like at a certain point you go like, this isn't me, right? And the only thing that even felt remotely similar to the 2016 energy was like when Hulk Hogan ripped his shirt off, but that was it. And then anything beyond that, you're like, okay, this is a literal joke and a slap in the face. And what's that one guy's name? He's like, I'm the gay Republican. And he's like, do conservatives think I should not be in the Republican Party? And it's like, of course not. You're just grifting, and you're trying to like build clout off of this. We end up getting Calendargate as well too. And that kind of told me in that early era, MAGA is going to die at some point. like there's too big of a rift with Christian conservatives and these kind of 2012 James Lindsay liberals trying to direct the direction of the party. It's going to ignite. And it looks like we found that person, which is going to be Nick Fuentes, blowing the entire thing up, which is awesome. And I'm glad because we need to see it. And I'm kind of curious, do you think it'll be successful though? Like how successful do you think it will be, this push from like the Groypers to get Newsom in office?
I think it'll be very successful. I think even if we didn't do it, I think Newsom would still win. Because I think that Vance is so pathetic and he's so stupid. I mean, the fact that images of making fun of how he looks, like the guy looks like a garbage pail kid. You know those old cards? He literally looks like a garbage pail kid. And the fact that images like that went so viral and became such an iconic meme, it just goes to show that he is a career politician. He was grown in a lab. I mean, every interview I've ever seen him on, I don't feel like I'm seeing a real person. I don't feel like I'm seeing an authentic, real human being. I'm seeing someone who is like lab grown at Yale to basically say vaguely what I want to hear so that I'll vote for him, 4 more years, 8 more years, and he will continue to drag the right further to the left. So I guess my answer to JD Vance would be, hey, don't poke the bear, right? Don't poke the bear. Governor Newsom, he might be the bear that we need to leave its cave and shift the Republican Party back into shape. That's all I got to say, because it's like, unless we, Nick posted about this the other day, but unless we kind of embody that meme magic, that memetic energy that we had in 2016 of trolling that got Trump elected, that got people interested in far right politics and dissident right politics in the first place, it's just going to die with Vance. It's just going to die and it's going to wither. And I don't want it to. I want that memetic energy to spin up and snowball into a real, authentic, conservative reaction in America. And if we keep that, and we need to topple the Republican Party in order to keep that, let's do it. Let's get all on board and just bring the whole house down.
Right. It's like the reckoning. And I guess, and people will say otherwise, but the idea, we got the alert that it's like 100 million, right? I think the Trump administration kind of let it out when they said they're going to be, for anti-Semitism, they're going to be screening the 55 million foreigners who are here on visas. And then I think if you add the additional 40, and I think some people think it's a lot more than that, we're looking at 100 million foreign people in this country. Now, that's largely where most people will stop with the accelerationism and they'll go to incrementalism because they'll say, well, at least with Vance and Trump, we'll get deportations. But the reality is we're not getting those. And I don't know how people cannot get it through their heads that it's not happening and it won't happen. And especially when you look at with Iran from all instances, right? They're fighting a war I think on 2 fronts at the time. They deport over 1 million Afghans in like a month, just using buses. And it's obvious the willpower to do so is not there. Like they're unwilling to do it. And it's not even for optics either, because Trump doesn't have another term he's going to run for. So the only answer is for what reason is he not doing even the most basic steps that people voted him in for? And so the question is, where do you think that stems back to, right? It goes back to, at least in my opinion, I think it all stems back to one singular source, which is, again, what we had talked about this entire time, which is there's clear Jewish influence in power that is trying to force the one nation state that has been extremely successful white Anglo-Christian country to its knees. And you can see that culturally, socially, and especially in the last couple of years, you see that geopolitically. And I think that's the part that's blowing it open for most people, is they can't stomach seeing the videos that they're seeing from Gaza anymore. They're like, please take it off my feet. I'm tired of seeing children being, blown to pieces. And so I'm kind of curious, on this timeline, how long do you think until we kind of fully pull all the censorship away and we do move to a bit more of a Wild West of the internet? Because I feel like that's what's coming in a couple of years, hopefully.
I think it's coming in a couple of years, but we have to be all on board and we have to bear it all, because if we don't, we are going to get a teal dictatorship. We're going to get the dark enlightenment. We're going to get that new caste system where it's Jews on top, it's, Indian moderators under them, and all the rest of us are being completely imprisoned in this new social credit system. And unless we are willing to do something now, even if it's posting memes. I wanted to say this earlier, but people don't realize like memes are not like stupid images, you know, the Like a Boss Baby or the Velociraptor
Right.
from 2008, right? Memes are now art, they're expression, they're ways of communicating a message. You know,
Yeah.
posting, and they're not even jokes anymore. Like just posting legitimately good edits or whatever can inspire the next doctor, the next scientist, the next saint into becoming a better, more actualized version of themselves. And you don't realize,
Yeah.
but when you post those things, you are inspiring a generation of young men to rise up and to do something truly great. Those go a long way. I was inspired by edits more than even, you know, Charlie Kirk or Ben Shapiro videos. I was inspired by edits that showed me what it means to be a white person, what it means to be a Christian, what it means to fight and live and die for something. Those edits changed my life. And if they inspired me to become the man I am today and the man I'm continuing to become, what can they do for all of us? Right?
Right.
So post, please, make art, make culture, make content, be the tastemakers that the internet needs you to be. Because if you're not doing that, we risk falling under a Palantir surveillance state that we may never be able to escape. And so we have to use the forms of memetic energy that are behind us in order to attack this dark enlightenment that they are trying to create.
Right. You know, and it's funny enough, you know, I think he's probably doing this to get away from a little bit, but you know, I think he announced as a 4-part series Peter Thiel's going to be doing on the Antichrist, like doing lectures. It's like,
Bro's just talking about himself. Like,
yeah, like
it's like you're doing an autobiography, bro. Like what's going on, you know?
Well, I'm kind of sitting here in the middle of this journey. And like you would say with the memes, right? Like the one that hits me the most is the one from Red Jedi, where it's the Groyper who gets on the computer and he's like, what happened with 9/11? Then it's just like flying all these images. And next thing you know, it's like Jesus. And it's like, that's me. You know, that basically described it for me. And you're spot on. And I think one thing that kind of as a through line, because I talked to Jeff Younger yesterday and he was talking pretty heavily about the iconography and icons. And it kind of hit me as you were saying that, because the way that they don't talk about drawing icons, they write icons. And it kind of made me feel like memes almost have that similar energy, where it's like they are a elaborate and complex expression that gets a lot out with like just an image. You know, it's like a lot can be read into it and pulled away from it. But you're spot on there. You know, for people, the internet is becoming more real life than people can understand. And on those ends, you're spot on. People need to make sure they're reposting, you know, liking, sharing, and definitely like, you know, pushing for the people who you think are doing good jobs, because that obviously helps in the algorithm, right? When they see more comments and more engagement. And you're spot on, especially if you know somebody who makes good memes, like repost their stuff, like, you know, don't rip them off, but like repost them, push their stuff out there. And I know we're getting short on time, but I wanted to go ahead and turn it over to you, because I know you have a dinner you wanted to get ready to. I don't want to hold you for too much longer, but I'm kind of curious if you had anything else that you wanted to drop off or anything I might have missed.
No, I mean, the basic thing is I want to use this event that happened to me of getting fired to actually create a content renaissance. And I'm trying my best to work now on like video content. I'm trying my best to re-up streaming, but making it something more professional. I literally just got a green screen. It's sitting right over there. So that's awesome. Going to be all different now. Like we're getting more professional. I'm dressing better. No more messy hair. No, I'm trying on the bad language, but sometimes I do think that a curse kind of punctuates what you're trying to say. So there's a little bit of a time for it here and there, but I feel the reason I want to do all this stuff, though, is so that you and me, Atlas and Nick, and all of us can act as this cultural catalyst for inspiring other young men to become great saints and to shift the culture to the Christian nation that we want to see this country become. And if we can use our content to inspire people and enliven people and educate people, those are platforms that we need to leverage in order to create the next generation of men who are going to inherit this country. And I think that's everything that I want to do. And I know that's what you want to do too.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the comments that hit me the most, you know, I get a lot that are like, you know, this voice is fake. Like, this guy is not even white. The ones that hit me the most are when they talk about, you know, this was very inspirational. I can't believe this was happening. I had no idea. Like, oh my gosh, like and especially the ones with Jeff too, like that one, being an eye opener into like family court. A lot of people have no idea. And that's the kind of stuff that I like, that doesn't make me feel good that it's happening, but it makes me feel good that like I at least was able to articulate to somebody else, be like, here's some of the talking points and tools I can give you to better understand the world around you, so you can fight better, and protest better. Because that's the reality, is we are in a struggle. And especially for like, I think white Christian men, we're in a myriad of struggles. There's multiple happening at once, and there's a lot of different wars on a lot of different fronts. And I don't want to go too deep into it, but I do think there is an element of, especially as it relates to females, that I think is a major hiccup for most men. And I think that's it's one of two ways, right? They either fall into the path of like, they begin to hate them and they just tune out to them. And those guys actually end up becoming very valuable soldiers and guys who do a lot of posting, but they hold that hatred in their heart, and ultimately like they're not building and setting themselves up for a family. Then on the other end, which I think is actually worse, you get these guys who and you said it great. You said a lot of these guys are like, what was the term? Like in a padded room and all four corners are women. It's like that. They are obsessed. They will put their entire lives, they will halt everything going on in their lives. They'll quit talking to family members because they are so insanely obsessed with trying to figure out how to get a girlfriend. And like that to me is like, it's sad. And you said it best. It's pathetic. And that's not to say we shouldn't pursue families, but to make your entire life your in personality like this, to chase a female who ultimately is like going to be a project if you do end up with one, it's just like it's just sad. And I'm kind of curious if you had any kind of parting words for men who are dealing with, who maybe are single or an incel and like just don't know where to go or how to situate themselves moving forward.
God needs to be your telos and your end. I say that all the time, and I know I sound like a broken record, but he needs to be your end. If you are going into anything in your life and he is not your end, it is going to be sinful and it is going to be depraved and it's going to be disordered. And it's very easy for guys to hear that and say, yeah, of course. But when the woman question comes up, it's the last vestige of a man's life where they are not allowing God to come in there and transform their heart.
Right.
And what I mean specifically by that is, you need to pray and open your heart to whatever God wants you to be. If God wants you to be single, whether that's as a lay person or become a priest or become a monk, you need to be open to that. And you need to be open to that eventuality. But if God wants you to be a family man, you need to see your marriage and your family as the vessel by which you become closer to the Father. And that has to be your end in your teleology. And any woman that you are with has to have that same end, because you won't be equally yoked. I see a lot of guys who they marry these ball-busting feminist women who might be trad, they might go to mass with them, they might veil, but God is not their end.
Yeah.
I know a good woman is hard to come by, but I have met good women before, and good women have God as their end. They don't think about offending God. They don't think about doing anything that's not of his will. And that needs to be the kind of woman that you have in your life. And so if God is calling you to marriage, you have to remember that he is the end, he is the goal, and heaven and eternal union with him is what you're striving for. And you need to find a girl who also has that end, because if you do not, my brother, doesn't matter how based or trad she is, she's going to lead you to the path of damnation or downplaying or watering your walk with Jesus Christ. And that's unacceptable.
That's beautiful advice. Thank you very much for that.
Of course,
ladies
brother,
and gentlemen,
yeah.
This has been Pine Sap. Your ex, I think that's the only thing that you had sent me. Your ex is in the description. So if people want to go follow you, they can go find you on X in the description below. Is there anything else you wanted to shout out?
No, I mean, just you can search up my YouTube channel, Pine Sap on YouTube. You can search up my Rumble. That's also Pine Sap, and Pine Sap 3 on Instagram. Those are all my socials.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you very much once again, man. We'll have to do this again sometime soon. I know if you're starting your own show, you can definitely we'll collab or do something again in the future. But I appreciate you coming on. This was awesome. And it looks like the chat revenue right now is sitting at like 346. I'll have to look at it. But I'm going to Venmo you like as soon as we end this. So 300.
That's totally fine. And hey, take your time. You're in no rush by any means.
No, but I appreciate it very much. Wanted to make sure it's worth your while and obviously help you recover. And if you can keep getting money coming in while you're working on the show, hopefully that can take you to the next level. But we appreciate it very much, and everybody have a good rest of your night. Christ is king. Deport Kash Patel. Put women back in the kitchen. Get them out of public office, and maybe we will have a chance to save this country. Good night, everybody.
What's good, everybody? This is Atlas Thug. As much as we have, it's currently a media blackout right now. It's about a 10-minute video here. Get the libertarians out of this party, dude. Part of a new series I'm going to be running called Bot or Not.
I grew up as a white man, and you're the exact opposite, you know?
It's time we have a difficult conversation about race.
40 IQ points it needs to think about what is being told to you.
Most people are just blatantly apathetic to what goes on around in their surroundings, let alone this play. A trans woman's penis make you gay?
Can I find an answer to that comment?
The dating market is for men your age.
I'm not a misogynist. I'm a sexist.
Right, like for example, like as a white man, I can go out and I could go right here in Columbus and scream the N-word as loud as I wanted to because I have that privilege. Those who would sacrifice a little freedom for a little convenience serves neither.
Titan says, Browns should be for whites. We were just trying to help them run a better empire.
Hey, truth.
But she straight up, she's like, stock market. She's like, bro, like, I can't even buy a fucking house. Like,
And, probably doesn't help that half the comments are, how are you not banned on YouTube? Man, how is this guy? How is this guy not banned on YouTube? It's like, yeah, I'm sure YouTube probably picks up on those things. And they're probably wondering why so many people are saying that,
and all these top brass pundits who have some kind of association or relationship with Epstein, it's getting to the point where you got to think like I'm about to go look at my residential history and be like, did I live next to Epstein for like some time? Like, man, everyone on this planet must have some relation to Epstein. And then you go, oh, actually, no. This is because the administration is all wrapped in together with it themselves.
and I said this maybe about a year ago, what if Christianity wasn't in such a cucked position that what if Andrew Tate, like Tristan, would have went to a Christian position? Fell for it again award, #1 right here. And you know what? I can't even make fun of the audience because I fell for it too. And that's probably what I'm most pissed about. He's huffing some extreme copium. Oh yeah, sister, you definitely owned him. Hey, can I see you after tonight? It's like that's that's what you're competing up against because for bad jacketing him and calling him a weird little gay.
Is this like alt-right corpse husband? What am I listening to?
Okay, stop it. This guy's gonna get into statistics, stuff like that.
Oh, no, statistics. Not
So-
we don't do statistics.